This one is called Moustache by Margie Palanti, illustrated by Henry Cole. Moustache. That's silly. To my dear with the 5 o'clock shadow. Moose had a problem. A horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moustache. Now, not a few spare hairs or shiny little stubble. No mere weak wandering whiskers on an upper lip, this moo. No siree. Moose had a big, bushy, bristly, mighty moustache. But a moustache that was a blurry, slurry, mangling mess. And it itched a lot.
Why?
Doesn't that look like a tickly mustache? A moustache? Sure, he plucked and he tweezed and he clipped and snipped and teased, but his combs were still cowards and his brushes all rebelled, and his scissors simply surrendered. Moose was in a frizzy tizzy. The moustache was completely cramping his style. He was a great hoofer, but he could barely bop and hip-hop with the moustache going flip-flop. He was a wonderful chef, but he simply could not flambe his souffle with all those whiskers in his way. And he was a daring skier, and how could he go on a downhill race with a mighty moustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what?
Wait, Mama, can you pretend like them white hair?
Nah,
Why?
we'll find the paper later. After days and days of much serious thought, Moose got an idea. He crossed some hair here and he crossed some hair there, and he tied his moustache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be an ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. But then his moustache got knotted and mangled and horribly tangled, and those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. And worse, Moose could barely take a breath with all that moustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied, unwrapped, unknotted, and he gulped in some fresh air. He got another idea. He patted some hairs this way, and he patted some hair that way, and he heaped the moustache all on top of his head. A moustachoid? Antlers seemed to be tied to the idea answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, until a squadron of squirrels and one very noisy gopher moved right into the Moose Motel. They huddled and hoarded and furrowed and burrowed. Needless to say, it became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and a heavy mess. And very noisy. The squirrely chitting and chatting squeals and squawks woke Moose up every morning before the crack of dawn, and that gopher was giving the moose one hairy headache. Moose needed his sleep, he needed his rest, and he needed his privacy.
What's privacy?
Alone time. Moustachoid, antlers, nuts, said Moose. So he unparted and unpiled, untwisted and wondered, and said adios to the hairy horns. But what now? What? The miserable moose took a hold of his hunk of hair, and he wrestled it, and he roped it, and he tethered and tied in a moose-tail. Now that was so simple, it was so perfect, so easy. That was not so perfectly perfect. Let's talk about a dizzy-do. Moose did not know if he was coming or going, backward, forward, this way, that. He did not know which end was the moose, he did not know which end was which. Moose had to bail on the tail. And so he thought and he thought and he thought, and he thought some more. But he had no other idea that was worthy of winning. Braids were a bother, moustache sweater too. A moustache sweater too sweltering. Net not. Poor Moose, his problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone, he did not know what else to do. Then call it fate, call it destiny, it was probably dumb luck, but one day Moose tripped on his moustache and just had no time to duck.
Why?
I don't know. Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked and they stared and their hearts went thump, thump. She was a moose, with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous, while it was just plain old big. Hair after hair piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb. Of course, Moose had to ask how she did what she did to get such a dew. Miss Moose winked and then whispered, "Just a little glue." So, she helped he fearlessly plunge a hoof into a fat pot of the white gooey goo.
Missy, what's this?
That's the Miss Moose. That's Mr. Moose. She put glue on there. And carefully, oh so carefully, they glopped and they plopped and they pasted and pressed and coaxed with every tiny, truly unruly, wiggly whisker. Around and around they tweaked and they twirled those horrible hairs until Moose's manky mess was now a wondrous winding wave of marvelous moustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled a moosey smile. He was so happy, so glad, so giddy with glee. He looked dashing and handsome. Moose gushed, "Is this really me?" With not a care for one hair, the moose bogged and he balked. And the cooking was hot, hot, hot. So of course it wasn't long after that Moose and his moustache and his beautiful pride fox-trotted and tangoed and waltzed down the aisle. Good hair days, bad hair days, they vowed to love and cherish, and their hearts heaped with love and pots filled with goop, and they both sighed, "I do glue," and promised never to part. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, and it's stuff.
The boy.
They had a baby.
This one.
The end.
Wait, this one.